Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 43, texts 36 to 40, translated by servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. Text 36. Tannishamya bravit Krsna Deshakalo chitang vachaha Niyuddham atmano bhishtam Manyamano bhinandyacha. Translation: hearing this, Lord Krsna, who liked to wrestle and welcomed the challenge, replied with words appropriate to the time and place. I'll read the translations of the next few verses. Lord Krsna said, although forest dwellers, we are also subjects of the Bhoja king. We must gratify his desires, for such behavior will confer upon us the greatest benefit. We are just young boys and should play with those of equal strength. The wrestling match must go on properly so that irreligion does not taint the respectable members of the audience. Chanur said, you aren't really a child or even a young man, and neither is Balaram, the strongest of the strong. After all, you playfully killed an elephant who had the strength of 1,000 other elephants. Therefore, you too should fight powerful wrestlers. There's certainly nothing unfair about that. You, O descendant of Vrishni, can show your prowess against me, and Balaram can fight with Mushtika. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 43rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna Kills the Elephant, Kuvalaya Pira. Thank you for kindly welcoming me here. This community is certainly is one of the best places in the world to discuss Krishna lila. Of course, anywhere is good for discussing Krishna lila, but it's especially Satang Prasangan. Krishna says, Kapila Dev says, Satang Prasangan Maramabirya Sangvidaha, that topics of my virya, my prowess, my glory, which is especially just about to be discussed here, that is best discussed among the devotees, in association with devotees. So, devotees here, many of the devotees have spent most of their lives studying Srila Prabhupada's books, serving Srila Prabhupada's mission. So, are well prepared for hearing these topics, which, although Srila Prabhupada himself did not in his lectures discuss much, he did enjoin us to discuss. There's something of a problem, or maybe it's not a problem, on speaking on Krishna lila, as you've had 43 chapters. Well, if we include the beginning of the 10th chapter, this is directly Krishna lila. This is just at the end, it's like the sandhya, the transition period between Vraja lila and outside of Vraja lila. So it's outside of Vraja, but it's still not quite, because at this point no one in Vraja knows, although they strongly fear that Krishna is not going to come back. So he's just supposed to go to Mathura and come back again, but we all know the sad story after that. So especially this Vraja Lila, there's a problem, is it a problem or not a problem, of speaking it, that it's very difficult to speak on it without becoming emotional, as you probably have experienced, especially just now, just in the previous section in which Akrura came to take Krishna and Balarama, actually did so, despite the horror of the devotees, especially the gopis, elder and younger. So that's very emotional. So maybe we shouldn't speak on that, because we're not supposed to become emotional in public. So, but then others would say, well, that's the very reason we should speak on it. So, you've probably seen some unrehearsed emotional or feeling that yourself in hearing about these pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan. And some of the things I may say here, they may also repeat some of the things that have already been said here in the last few days and weeks. But no harm at all, because to hear about Krishna is always glorious, cause of happiness, unless you prefer Kamsa to Krishna. And purify. Shinu, Shukadam, Shubhadam, Bhavasaram. All the avatars. Shijaya Deva, Shijaya Deva Kaverida Mudita Mudaram, Shrinu, Sukadam, Shubhadam, Bhavasaram, Keshavadhrita, Dasha Vidharupa, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. He states, as is stated so many times here in the Bhagavatam, also Jayadev Goswami states at the beginning of his Gita Govinda, that hearing this narration, this particular narration by himself, Jayadev, the Gita Govinda, that of the hearing about the 10 avatars that will bestow happiness and auspiciousness on the world. So, notwithstanding our disqualification, generally everyone in the material world, especially in this Kali Yuga, is disqualified for devotional service, but Srila Prabhupada has kindly given us the qualification of his mercy, so we can attempt to discuss such subjects. Krishna has come from Vrindavan to Mathura. Vrindavan is the land of Madhurya Mayi Lila, the Lila which is predominated by sweetness. And Mathura, that means the entrance into Aishvarya Mayi Lila. Aishvarya Mayi Lila, that Lila that is predominated by opulence. And one of the great opulences that Krishna will immediately demonstrate, or has already at this point begun to demonstrate by killing Kuvalayapura, the terrible elephant. This is opulence of great strength, power, courage, vigor, virility, is virya. Of course, this was also demonstrated many times in Vrindavan. And it's clearly an attribute of Krishna's that demonstrates him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in Vrindavan, even though it should be obvious to anyone that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, due to the extraordinary activities that he performs, in Vrindavan, they don't think it. They're all in Maya. Everyone in Vrindavan's in Maya. They're being attached to the what is that? Ato griha kshetra sutabda vitaya janasya moho yamahammameti. One is in Maya, thinking in terms of I, me and mine, because of attachment, first of all to one's wife, and then to beginning with one's own body, then the wife, and then to one's home and one's land and one's children and one's money, one's wealth. So everyone in Vrindavan is in Maya, and therefore they cannot recognize Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, this is Yoga Maya, totally pure spiritual Maya, so they are attached to their children, especially when Krishna becomes their child. He assumes the form of their children. They're attached to their place, they're attached to Vrindavan, they're attached to their wealth, which is their cows. So the residents of Vrindavan, being overwhelmed by the loving feelings of Krishna, don't recognize that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he obviously is. But even though Krishna performs so many wonderful activities, they either think that, the cowherd boys think that, yeah, he's a pretty tough guy, but anyway, time to time I beat him in wrestling anyway, so who is this guy? He's overrated. He's just like that. Or Mother Yashoda, she thinks that, because I worshipped Narayana in my childhood, then Lord Narayan saves Krishna. And because we go on, whenever he gets in trouble, we call some priests and we chant some mantras and we're keeping him alive, like this. They can't recognize, or just, even if they know, even Krishna showed the residents of Vrindavan the spiritual world with himself as the predominator of that, but they just forget it immediately, being overwhelmed by loving feelings for Krishna, intense loving feelings for Krishna. Just like Mother Yashoda, when she saw the whole universe within Krishna's mouth, including herself holding Krishna, she started to philosophically speculate, maybe he is the Supreme Lord. Then all of a sudden Krishna thought, this is not very nice. That my mother, she's beginning to get all philosophical about me. So Krishna started crying and indicating that he wanted to suck her breast, at which point Mother Yashoda completely forgot all these extraordinary things that she had seen. So although there is unlimited opulence in Vrindavan, it is overwhelmed by the mood of sweetness. And although sweetness is by no means absent in Krishna's pastimes outside of Vrindavan, sweetness is still prominent. That is the essence of Krishna being Krishna. His sweetness, madhurja bhagavata sa. The sweetness is the essence of God's godness, not His power. We would think that who is the most powerful must be God, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's understanding is that who is the most sweet, he must be the Supreme Lord. Also, when Bhrigu Muni went to test the three who are generally considered the three controlling deities, Brahma, Shiva and Vishnu, he didn't test to see how powerful they were. He tested to see what is their character. So sweetness is the essence of Bhagavan, and in his pastimes outside of Vrindavan, also sweetness is prominent, but there is a strong sense of understanding, of appreciating his Aishvarya, his Ishvarata, the fact that he is the Supreme Lord, he is most opulent, he is most powerful, he is the one among many, Eko Bahanam Yo Viditati Kamam. He is the provider of all. So here we see Krishna is with his cowherd boys and with Nanda Maharaj and the elderly cowherd men in Mathura. As Krishna states here, then, well, we're just forest dwellers. He defines himself as such. He has not become the sophisticated prince that the gopis imagined him to be after he had settled outside Vrindavan. Krishna here, we see some of his qualities are described. He speaks Deshakalo Chitam Vachaha, words that are appropriate to the time and place. So as Krishna often does, whether speaking with his devotees in jest or speaking with his enemies, or more precisely those who consider Krishna to be their enemy, he speaks in a manner which is cryptic manner. We see that Krishna, he's actually pleased by the proposition of the demon Chanur. He's very pleased with that what Chanur wants, and what the king wants, Kamsa wants, Krishna also wants. Yeah. So here we find Krishna agreeing with Kamsa. They have something in common. They both want that Krishna will fight with the wrestlers, because Krishna, he likes to wrestle. The people of Mathura those who, well, they were different. Some were inclined to Kamsa, and all showed themselves to be, but many of them, they didn't like him. They knew he was a demon, and that nothing auspicious could come from being under such a demoniac king. It's Dharma 101, that the king has to be pious. If the king is not pious, then no one can actually execute pious activities. because in the Varnashram system, the pious activities are channeled or organized and then channeled in offering to Vishnu via public yagyas, all under the guidance, and the king becomes the yajaman for the sake of all his subjects, the receiver of the benefits, or the one who organizes the yajna. So under an impious king, the varnashram cannot work. So many of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, of Mathura, they will be very happy when Kamsa is killed, but they can't show it now. Not quite yet. But they've heard of Krishna. Everyone in Mathura has already heard of Krishna, although he's some village boy living in some forest, somewhere in the region, but everyone's heard of him. They all know of him. And some like him and some don't like him. But everyone has heard of him, and they all know he's not an ordinary person. They all know he's extraordinary, and especially the women of Mathura, they have heard that even though he's a young boy, he's a very gorgeous personality and most attractive personality. And although they live in the city being very sophisticated compared to the village dwellers, their situation is especially the higher caste women, the Kshatriya women, the Brahmanas mostly will live simply. Vaishyas especially in the city, the forest Vaishyas, they'll have plenty of cows, and the city Vaishyas, they will be wealthy with gold and jewels and opulent buildings. But the women of Mathura, they think that the girls of Vrindavan, they are much more fortunate, because the women of Mathura, they desire to see Krishna even once, but they think of the residents of Vrindavan who can always gaze on the moon-like face of Krishna. Although the gopis of Vrindavan, they themselves feel very unfortunate because they cannot do so 24 hours a day. They cannot be in Krishna's company 24 hours a day. And even if they are in his company, that idiot Brahma, I'm just paraphrasing what they said. So, please Brahma, don't take any offense. It's, he made our eyes to blink. So in that space of time we cannot see Krishna. So Krishna is very pleased with the opportunity to rest. Here's a description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that is... There are many descriptions of Krishna. Practically everything about Krishna is foreign in every sense to the kind of religion that is dominant in America. If we may go to an interfaith conference and they'll say, well, what's your idea of God? And we open the Srimad Bhagavatam and says, he likes to wrestle. Very difficult one to explain. But he thinks, yeah, it's a good proposal that the king wants me to wrestle. And Krishna goes on to say that he himself wanted to wrestle, but he didn't say, yeah, I'd like to wrestle. He said, well, we're subjects of the king. We should do what the king desires. That will bring all auspiciousness to us. So that's a fact. If when there's actually a pious king, a king should be a pious king, then if the citizens fulfill his desires, and he should be trained so that not to cultivate illicit desires, but by doing so, because he is the representative of the Supreme Lord, we find In Gita, Krishna says, Naranam Chandaradhipam. Among men I am represented as the leader of men, the king. So by fulfilling his desire, the citizen is benefited. Of course, in the case of a demon like Kamsa, by fulfilling his desire, you're not benefited. So you're caught in a difficult situation. If you do what he says, even if it's something innocuous, or like that washerman, the cloth dyer, he was bringing cloth for the king. And so even to bring him cloth, even to serve him in such, that doesn't seem to be a very bad thing, but to serve such a bad person bestows sin upon a person, even if you do something which is not in and of itself sinful. But if you refuse to, then you get your head chopped off or something similar. So it puts the citizens in a very difficult situation. But Krishna here, we can understand, he's speaking cryptically. We must gratify the king's, Kamsa's desires. Yes. Indirectly, Krishna is saying that Kamsa, he desires to be killed by me. Actually, Kamsa, he's although he's so powerful, he doesn't fear anyone, or he thought he had no one to fear in the universe, but he is mortally afraid, literally mortally afraid of Krishna. But as spirit soul, underneath that massive covering of illusion, this is Mahamaya, not the Yoga Maya of the gopis, of the Vrajavasis. He desires to be united with Krishna. So Krishna will kill him, Kamsa, and Kamsa will be united with Krishna. So Krishna is also cryptically speaking. We must gratify his desires, for such behavior will confer upon us the greatest benefit. In other words, it is the dharma of the citizen to follow the order of the king. And by following one's dharma, one will be benefited. So Krishna, he also has his dharma. There is dharma means the many meanings, the inherent nature of any entity, the specific role that any person is supposed to play in society. There is Jaiva Dharma, or the specific role that the jiva is supposed to play, that is Jiva Sarup Hoy Krishna Nitya Das. And Krishna himself explains his own dharma in relationship to the worldly dharma, sadharana dharma, that Krishna himself establishes, and from whom he is non-different. Krishna explains that as being paritranaya sadhunam vinashayata dushkritam. So Krishna, his dharma, or his self-accepted and self-proclaimed dharma or duty is to kill demons like Kamsa, and in this way to deliver the devotees. So Krishna, he has to do that. He sets the example of dharma by performing his own dharma. He tells Arjuna that you should follow your own dharma. So Krishna follows his own dharma by killing the demon. So by accepting the order of the king to fight, and that fighting will escalate beyond the wrestlers, that will go up to Kamsa also. Kamsa will also be killed. So Krishna, he will fulfill his own dharma by doing so. And he says about this that tam na param anugraha. So that's again cryptically that anugraha means that will be my great mercy. It will be my great mercy on Kamsa by killing him. So all these demons, they're very great demons. They're not little demons like we have in the world today. Of course, even the little demons who they become, in our estimation, powerful, they can cause a lot of suffering, as we can see in the world today. That is what the demons accept as their dharma, to cause distress to others. These were big demons. Krishna doesn't come to kill little demons. He kills them on the side also. Or he may do so through others. But these are big demons. We know their previous lives of all the major characters who are described in Krishna lila, their previous lives, how they came to this situation, that is described in Garga Samhita. Did anyone speak about that? The short description in Garga Samhita of the wrestlers in their previous life. Kamsa, that's well known. Kamsa was Kalanemi, who in the course of our reading gets killed by Vishnu in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam. So he was very powerful, even in his childhood. This Kuvalayapira was an extremely powerful elephant with there's that word used as it's an adjective in English, diabolical strength. Diabolical gives the strength of the idea of demoniac strength, like as if empowered by Satan, something like that. Sometimes we see someone becomes crazy. We would say ghostly haunted, but that's not accepted by modern scientists who have decided that we shouldn't believe in ghosts because we can't scientifically find them out to be true. We find someone, they may have strengths which cannot be explained in terms of their muscles, incredible strength by which they can single-handedly fight 20 people. So that diabolical strength, this Kuvalayapir had diabolical strength, but Kamsa, just as a young boy, he threw this Kuvalayapir in the air and subdued him. So took him under his control. There was a sage, rishi, whose name comes up here and there in the Puranas and Mahabharata, Uttata. So he had 6 sons, Brahmins, but they were not like Brahmins. They liked to wrestle. And the rishi told them, this is not what sons of rishis are supposed to do. You're supposed to be like Brahmins. So he threw them out and said, you go, you get out of here and just go and find some go mix up with some Kshatriyas, and he cursed them that by demoniac association he'll also become a demon. So they became sons of the king of Mahishmati, which in the Puranas seems to be central India capital for demons. There are always demons turning up there. This Arjuna, Kartavirya Arjuna, that was his capital, and Ravana came there. That's still a major center of Shaiva worship. So they became very powerful wrestlers. By these wrestlers, by the names of what are their names? Chanara, Mushtaka, Tosha. I wrote their names down because I knew I wouldn't remember them. Kuta, Shala, Toshala, yeah. So they became very powerful, and Kamsa, just as a young boy, came to visit them and said, "Okay, let's fight. And if I defeat you, you become. If you defeat me, I'll become your servant. If I defeat you, you become my servant." So they agreed to the proposition, and he very easily defeated them all, and they became his servants. In Garga Samhita also it's described how little bit more than in the Bhagavatam of how Kuvalayapi was killed. That in Bhagavatam is also described how Krsna, he hid behind the legs of the great elephant, who then he became confused by this. It's just as Krishna used to hide when playing games of hide and seek in the forest, he would hide behind the trees. So after this, Krishna ran away, as if ran away in fun from the great elephant, Kuvalayaprid. And they ran through the streets of Mathura, which is extremely frightening. You can imagine a big city, the streets will be packed with the stalls of shops and people milling here and there. All of a sudden there's a wild elephant running through. So that's extremely frightening for everyone. Balaram came running up behind and grabbed Kuvalayapi's tail. And then he was swinging him side to side like this, which is very frustrating and embarrassing for the great elephant. And then Krishna grabbed him by the trunk, and they were pulling from different directions, which was very painful and distressing to the elephant. Now at last he was, after giving pain and distress to so many others, he was getting some pain and distress himself. So the other Mahuts, the elephant drivers, they called other elephants to come and attack. So in the meantime, Krishna killed Kuvalayapir, and all the other elephant drivers started to attack them, and they sent the cowherd boys after them. So then that news entered the arena, because Kamsa was sitting inside. He thought, well, let Kuvalayapir kill him, and then he won't even reach. We called Krishna for the paying the taxes and for the wrestling match. So it was as if a polite invitation. Please come to see. They didn't say come and be a participant. They said come and see. There's a big festival going on, because it was the time of tax paying. So not only the Vrajavasis, but many people from all over the kingdom had assembled. So the streets were packed, the stadium was packed, the special festival had been arranged, wrestling, and there may have been so many other things were scheduled for the entertainment of the people who come to pay their taxes, their tax money being used for something for them. So the idea was that, well, let Kuvalayappi kill him, and if somehow that doesn't work, well, that we have these prize wrestlers on hand. But of course, that didn't work either. Okay, well, let's time up more or less. So, is there any questions? Do you have another mic?
Should we try to see the symbolic representations of some of these things, or just take it as it is? For instance, is there any significance in Krishna and Balaram pulling the trunk and the tail of the elephant?
Is there anything symbolic in Krishna's pulling the tail and the trunk of the elephant? I'm sure you could find something in there. You could find something symbolic in everything, if you tried hard enough. Mayavadis are especially good at that. They symbolize everything, and they reduce all of lila to symbolism, just like Krishna stole the clothes of the gopis, so this means we have to be naked to come before God. So it is possible to find symbolism in almost anything, if one can use one's creative intelligence or take intelligence from Krishna. But we also have to understand that these are real activities also of Krishna. And we find, the acharyas, in commenting on the pastimes, they often give what we can call symbolic meanings, just like the 6 sons of Devaki. I believe it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes them as being symbolic. The 6 sons who were born prior to Balaram and Krishna, they were there. Compared to Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsaya, lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, and envy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has compared the various demons killed by Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan to various anarthas, unwanted things in the heart, which are to be killed. So that may be done, but it's probably best to leave that to the acharyas rather than speculating ourselves on this.
Maharaj, thank you for the class. You were mentioning in the class about the inhabitants of Vrindavan were in Maya, but you said they were in Yoga Maya. So one was trying to be Krishna conscious. Like this morning, I saw my brother-in-law in class, and I didn't see my sister. But as soon as she came out from the pujari room, I was very happy to see her. And I can say, well, she's a devotee, so I'm happy. But if I'm honest, there is some attachment there. We were in the womb together, so there's some attachment there.
Twin sister? Yes.
And so...
you remember her from then? Sahodara. She's called your Sahodara, sister who is in the womb with you.
So, what I want to ask is, so how can one purify that attachment?
How can you purify that attachment? Well, I was just thinking of what Kunti Devi said about breaking that attachment. She said, of all people, on both sides, her family were great devotees, and she said, Sneha Pashamimang Chindi. What is the next line? Sneha Pashamimang Chindi Vishnishus. She said, please cut my attachment to the Vrishnis and the Pandavas. So that attachment that she has is inseparable from her Krishna consciousness. but she doesn't want it to be in any way materially tinged. That's in lila. We find Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is often described as the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but he never introduced himself as such. In India, the culture is that someone is known as the son of their father. That's your first identity is as the son of your father, and for the woman, when she's married, as the wife of her husband. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he always saw Bhaktivinoda Thakur as a Nitya Siddha Mahapurush, and he did not want to ascribe to himself any mundane relation. He treated him as a disciple would a guru, and he approached him in that way. So, if we can do that among relatives, see them in the spiritual relationship. If they're devotees, we can see them in the spiritual relationship as fellow servants of the Guru. That's a suggestion. Yeah, anything else?
Hare Krishna. The Lord, one of his reasons was to re-establish Dharma. But that Dharma did not seem to go far away from Bharatvarsha. And also it did not...
What did you say, that Dharma didn't go far from Bharatavarsha?
Yeah, the time when the Lord came, or after he left, it, from what we know, it didn't seem like to extend to the whole world at that time. And then the other point is...
Well, can we do one time? Huh? One question at a time? That's a question, is it?
Can I complete two and then you answer both?
All right.
And the other part is, even Bharatvarsha, it did not seem to stay for a long time there either. Yeah, so can you answer that?
Well, it's not exactly a question, it's a comment. But it's an objection, I suppose. So, Dharma, Krishna came to establish Dharma, but it didn't seem to last very... Didn't seem to extend to the whole world. Why do you say that? What do you know was going on in the whole world at that time? According to the
from the little history we know.
From well, that's if you believe world history, what you learn in the school. That's why we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam here and not world history in the school. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, as translated by Srila Prabhupada, although one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples indicates that Srila Prabhupada translated wrongly, I'd rather go along with Srila Prabhupada. Yudhishthira Maharaj's reign was all over the world. So that's my reply to objection 1. And what was the reply to objection 2?
Yeah, well, Maharaj Yudhishthira, after Krishna left, he also left the world
fairly shortly, yeah.
And so, and then, okay, so the other part, even Bharatvarsha, we find that it seems like the Dharma the Lord established way easily, because when Buddha came, that was like 2,000 years later on, he had to try to re-establish some different dharmas again.
So what's the question? The Krishna established dharma, but it didn't last very long.
Yeah.
It never lasts very long, because that's the nature of this world. People come to this world for adharma, not for dharma. And Kali Yuga is pretty bad, but at least it got off to a good start. If Duryodhana had been in, can you imagine how much worse it would be? At least we have something to look to. We have a better example to look to. Any questions from the ladies? Or am I supposed to finish 9 o'clock? Yes, please.
Maharaj, in the start of the class you were saying that you assumed that we were hearing these pastimes, and you mentioned like Akrura taking Krishna away, and you mentioned that naturally you were assuming that we were feeling emotional, fact that something like that would happen. My question is, what if somebody does not feel emotions, or how to actually...
Go back to, if you don't feel emotional in reading Krishna Lila, go back to Canto 1. Read through, develop appreciation for Krishna, and follow all the instructions in there. And keep on going. Keep on going in Krishna consciousness. With the faith that if we continue on this path, then surely, maybe not this lifetime, maybe not in the next lifetime, maybe in millions of lifetimes, but Krishna will show His mercy to me. Surely. That faith should be there. But certainly if we go on hearing about Krishna, then attachment will arise. We won't even want to go on hearing about Krishna unless there's at least some attachment at some level. All right, shall I take one more question and then finish?
You mentioned Duryodhana. Balaram really favored Duryodhana.
Balaram favored Duryodhana. Now we're getting into intricacies of lila.
Can you shed any light?
Shed any light on that? Well, Balaram's very merciful. He gave his mercy, or he had some disposition toward Duryodhana also. Somehow he liked him. That's his mercy. Somehow, yeah, that's called ahaituki kripa, causeless mercy. Doesn't have to have any cause. That's the very meaning of the word ahaituki. Krishna can do what he likes. If he wants, he can give great... That Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sings that Ashura Shakal Pailo Charan Bhakti Vinoda Thakelo Boshi. He says that all the demons, they attain to your lotus feet, and me, I'm just sitting here. I didn't get anywhere. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays for the mercy of Gopinath in this way. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.